The House is planning to vote on a pair of immigration reform bills today, but it appears that House Republican leaders are divided on the issue. Freedom Caucus Chair Mark Meadows and House Speaker Paul Ryan could be seen on the floor of the House arguing over the two bills up for a vote. Meadows downplayed the confrontation, but did tell reporters the so-called compromise bill, the one leadership is backing, is not ready for prime time. Joining us now, Republican Congressman Jim Jordan. He's co-founder of the Freedom Caucus. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us.
Good to be with you.
You are a no-nonsense guy, and I know you normally don't stand for what you consider to be anything that's BS. There are 2,300 kids who've been separated from their families, still in detention this morning, separated from their parents, and the administration says they don't have a solution to get them back together. In fact, last night they told us they were going to do nothing to get them back together. How can that be?
Well, I mean, look, John, everyone wants families to stay together. That's just good common sense. We want that to happen. There's legislation pending. Mr. Meadows, the guy you just referenced, has a bill that he's introduced in the House that would bring families back together, but more importantly, or just as importantly, deal with our asylum law and fix that law.
We'll talk about the bills.
Senator Cruz has the same kind of legislation.
We'll talk about the bills in a second. We'll talk about the measures you're all going to vote on today in a second. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what has already happened.
You were talking about action we could take to fix the problem.
No, I'm talking about
the asylum law and the separation of families. Let's fix the problem.
That absolutely, and you're going to vote on those measures today. That's talking about what to do about going forward, what to do about people who still have yet to arrive at the border. I'm talking about these 2,300 people who were separated because of a decision, because of a decision by this administration. Don't they need to be reunited with their parents?
Let's fix that, too. And I think that was everyone's assumption when the president signed the executive order yesterday. This is news to me, so let's figure this out. Let's reunite those families. But we do have to fix the Flores decision. We do have to fix the asylum law. And frankly, John, we got a lot of other things we told the American people we were going to do in the election that we need to get done. We need to keep our word. And that's what we want to try to do today on one of those bills that's going to be on the floor. It is consistent with the mandate of the election. So let's pass that as well.
And we'll come to that again in just a second. You said it's news to me that the administration doesn't have a plan to reunite these 2,300 kids with their parents.
The president signed an executive order
that is
yesterday
not about
that
is not about the reunification. That is about what to do going forward.
Let's work that. Let's fix that. But we also have to deal with the Flores decision, which is the impetus, which is the catalyst for why they're separated in the first place.
I just want to be clear. I just want to be clear. You want the administration to reunite these 2,300 children with their parents immediately.
John, everyone wants the kids to be reunited with their parents, but you have to sort it out. You have to do it in a way that's consistent with the law. You have to fix the asylum law, which is broken. Everyone understands. We had ICE in our office last week. 80% of the people coming to this country seeking asylum don't get asylum because they're not legally entitled to it. So when that is that much, 80%, when you have that kind of number, you have to fix all this. So let's do it, but let's do it in a way that's consistent with keeping families together. That makes all the sense in the world.
Great. You keep saying everyone wants these 2,300 children reunited with their parents. I just don't know if that's the case based on the answer we got from the administration overnight. I hope you're right. I really hope you're right.
And I signed an executive order yesterday. What else do you want?
There's nothing in the executive order. You show me in the executive order where he says any one thing about reuniting the people already separated. It doesn't. It just doesn't say anything about reuniting those kids with their parents. Also, there was an official, a spokesperson from HHS who at first told us...
You really think he signs an executive order saying we're not going to separate kids, we're going to keep them together throughout the adjudication process, throughout the whole process where we're determining whether they legitimately need to receive asylum or not. We're going to keep them together the whole time, but the ones that were separate, we're not going to bring them back together. You really think that's the case?
It's not what I think. It's what we were told. It's what we read. It's what we read, first of all, and then what we were told by an HHS official. I'll have someone hand that to me in just a second. But
and if that's the case, we have legislation pending introduced by Representative Meadows on the House side, or Senator Cruz on the Senate side. Let's pass that legislation and deal with it.
All right. And just one last thing on the past, and then I want to go to the future here. Do you think it was a mistake in retrospect for the president to take this action to decide to separate the children from their parents?
I think what the president is trying to do is what the American people elected us all to do. Keep families together, certainly, but do it in a way that's consistent with the rule of law. That's what they were trying to do. That's what the election was about. That's why we need to pass a piece of legislation today, the Goodlatte legislation, which says, let's build the border security wall. Let's stop chain migration. Let's get rid of sanctuary cities. Let's get rid of the visa lottery. Let's reform our asylum law. Let's do all that because that's what the election was about. I think that's what they were trying to get out. get at, and I think we need to do it now, certainly in a way that's consistent with keeping families unified throughout the process, which is what the executive order does.
Okay, going forward, it does that. It doesn't reunite the 2,300 kids, but we covered that ground. I do want to talk about the measures coming up for a vote today. You support the Goodlatte bill, which is seen as the more conservative measure. There's a second one that leadership reports, this so-called compromise measure. Will you vote yes on that?
I will not. I'll vote for the first one. Again, this is the one that's, for me, this is real basic. What do we tell the American people we're going to do? Chairman Goodlatte's legislation is entirely consistent with that message, with that mandate from the 2016 election. So let's do that. And it does it in the right order, in my judgment. Build the border security wall, stop the visa lottery, stop chain migration, get rid of sanctuary cities, reform our asylum law, and then, oh, by the way, let's also deal with this DACA population who came here as children, who are now adults. Let's deal with them, and let's do it in a way that's consistent with not putting them at the front of the line, not giving them a special path, but doing it in a way that's consistent with folks who come here legally. That's what the American people elected. That's fair. That's consistent with the rule of law. Let's pass that legislation.
I'm not, I think, reporting something you don't know, but I do not think that the Goodlatte measure has the votes to pass as we sit here. I'm not sure whether the compromise bill does either, based on the whip counts we have heard. Where do you think the compromise measure stands right now? We saw Freedom Caucus Chair Mark Meadows fighting with Paul Ryan. Where do you think it is?
I mean, look, we would have appreciated the same kind of intensity from our leadership in whipping the Goodlatte legislation that they seem to now have for the compromise bill. The compromise bill's got some good elements in it. I worked on some of those. It just doesn't go far enough, and I don't think it's entirely consistent with the message we gave the American people when they elected us. So we'll see what happens today. I'm hopeful that the first one passes, because that's the one that is consistent with the promise we made to the American people.
Has Paul Ryan let you down? Has leadership let you down on this?
No, I just wish they would have whipped this, the first Goodlatte legislation months ago when it was first introduced. I wish we'd have had the same intensity we had for, say, the tax reform bill that we all got done, or frankly, the intensity we're now having for the second compromise bill. Where was that intensity 6, 7 months ago when the bill was introduced, when we all said this is the kind of legislation that we need to pass because this is what we told the American people we were going to do?
Can I ask you something about quirky? Something quirky that happened when the president came and spoke to your caucus the other night. He made a joke about Mark Sanford, who I know you've worked with for a number of years. He essentially went into the room and said, hey, where's Mark Sanford? He ran a great election campaign, didn't he? Sanford, of course, just lost in his primary. The president yesterday put out a tweet that said, had a great meeting with the House GOP last night at the Capitol. They applauded and laughed loudly when I mentioned my experience with Mark Sanford. I've never been a fan of his. Did you laugh when he made that joke?
Look, I don't comment on things said behind closed doors, particularly in a Republican conference, particularly with our commander-in-chief. What I do know is Mark Sanford is a friend. I supported Mark Sanford. I did a telephone call for Mark Sanford. I helped support him in the campaign. I wanted Mark Sanford to win. He's a good man. He's a colleague. He's a member of the Freedom Caucus, and I wish he would have won the election.
Congressman, I want to go back before I let you go. And we are going to keep you for another segment, but you do contact this administration a lot. You press them on a lot of different issues. Will you call them and say, how are you going to get these 2,300 kids back with their parents?
We'll find out about it. Yeah, like I said, I had ICE and Borders and Customs in my office last week. What I do know, though, John, is the last year and a half has been a good year for the country on so many fronts. I mean, you can't, the lowest unemployment in 20 years, taxes are down, the economy, lots of good things happening out there. We need to focus on that sometimes instead of some of the other things that get talked about in the news.